I'm Matt Ringel, creator of Alice, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Matt Ringel about his Kickstarter miniseries comic book called Alice. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Matt is from the Ottawa, Ontario region. In his off time, Matt plays D&D and co-hosts a podcast called Nerdium. His ongoing series, Fallen, blends the genres of mystery, thriller, and fantasy by creating a thrilling mythological detective story set in the vibrant synth-pop filled era of the 1980s in the loud, crowded streets of New York City. As the writer, Matt's newest project is a sci-fi comic book miniseries called Alice, supported by artist Marika Cresta, known for Marvel's Dr. Aphra and Captain Carter, colorist Fariza Kemaputra, known for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, plus work for IDW, DC, and Image Comics, and letterer Tobin Rasico, known for Beastlands, The Wild Cosmos, Thorn Squadron, Menagerie, Rumble Kings, Crown and Anchor, and more. Alice is a 4-part comic book sci-fi miniseries, a retelling of the classic Lewis Carroll story, which is described as follows. She wanted to change the world. Instead, she changed the world she was in. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Matt Ringel about his Kickstarter miniseries comic book called Alice. So, Matt Ringel, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Thanks for having me back.
I appreciate your time. Remember last time we were chatting about your book Fallen. That's been going well?
Yeah, it's been going very well. Issue 4 is in production already, and issue 3 is now being fulfilled, so busy times.
Very good. Good to hear. Normally I ask about first comic book, but we've already done that. So I wanted to ask you, what are you reading these days? What's on your bedside reading table?
Right now, there's a couple different things I'm kind of going through. I think it's issue 3 of Green Lantern Earth 1. It's kind of an interesting kind of take on the Green Lantern series, a little bit more gritty. It's almost like kind of like a Star Wars feel to it. I've also been going through Something is Killing the Children, reading back a few of the issues there. Been really enjoying Radiant Black. And yeah, there's a few other books that's kind of been popping up on my nightstand. So.
Oh, good. All good stuff for sure. So we're here talking about your latest Kickstarter project coming in March called Alice. So I wonder if you could tell me what it's all about and maybe what was the origin of the project too.
Okay, so Alice is going to be a 4-part miniseries. It's going to be a little bit bigger than the Fallen books. It's going to be in the 30 to 40 page range for each issue. I think I'm at maybe 31 pages for issue 1. And it's a kind of sci-fi cyberpunk retelling of the classic tale of Alice in Wonderland.
Ah, okay. So what inspired you? Was there something you watched? Was it the Tim Burton movie, or were you reading Lewis Carroll's original novel? How did you get inspired to create this?
I've always kind of been a fan of Alice in Wonderland, even back to the original kind of like Disney cartoon. And then the Tim Burton one was pretty interesting. It was an interesting kind of reimagining of the Disney version and also the Lewis Carroll. It's always been kind of, there's parts of that kind of tale that always kind of pop up in pop culture all over the place all the time. So it's interesting to see where it's kind of inspired pop culture when you don't even think about it. Like it pops up in The Matrix, it pops up in a bunch of other stuff. So
yeah, it's true. I was actually just rewatching Star Trek Discovery's second episode, and one of the lead characters was actually citing parts of that book as she was going through one of the Jeffries tubes. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So you're not working alone on this project. I wonder if you could talk about who's working with you. Who are your collaborators?
So the illustrator is Marika Cresta. And then color is done by Fariza Kemaputra. And then I have the letterer that I've been using for Fallen, Tobin Rasico. So it's been pretty good. It's like an all-star team kind of lined up for Alice.
For sure. Now, you mentioned you've worked with Tobin before, and we've interviewed him on this podcast, which is great. But this is your first time working with Marika Cresta. How did you find her?
So whenever I kind of look for artists for a new project, I kind of put out the feelers. I usually get like an incredible amount of interested parties. Some don't really match the kind of the feel or kind of the spirit of the project. So it takes a lot of time to filter through. Sometimes I just kind of go through a deep dive of comic artists on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll find one and I'll reach out to them, which happened with Marika. And surprisingly, she was available at the time to work on Alice.
Wow, that's amazing. Because for those who don't know, she's known for her work on Marvel's Dr. Aphra, which I believe is going to enter into probably the TV version of Star Wars very soon as a real character. And I understand she's also on the Captain Carter series that's coming up. So very hot artist these days. So you lucked out there.
She's quite busy and she's very talented. So, and her work on Alice has been incredible so far. So.
Yeah, that's the next question I have for you is a collaboration process. Typically, it's a give and take type of thing. Can you walk me through how did you do it? Did you just say, here's the script, go, or was it a back and forth process?
As always, I come up with a script. I kind of talk with each artist before I start writing some of the heavy parts of the script, like the kind of like the scenes and all that, just because I like to hear if they want more or less structure to work with. Sometimes an artist wants to have a lot more kind of input on what happens in the scene, and others they'll literally draw what you put in the panel descriptions. So with her, there's a lot of back and forth, but she's really kind of been able to kind of take what I was envisioning and actually do a really good job at putting that on the page, and then also putting her own kind of spin on it.
I was wondering, as this back and forth was going on, did you say to yourself that this might have a different outlook on the remainder of the series? Did it sort of impact your writing at all?
Somewhat. Like I have the remainder of the series kind of plotted out, and I leave a little bit of wiggle room for when I get some inspiration from actually seeing it drawn and laid out. There's a few things that I would maybe kind of change in the series, but overall, she's done a really good job at capturing what I was trying to get across.
Very good. Now, I know that you're putting this on Kickstarter. With the advent of Marika coming along with doing the illustrations, is there any hope that it might be picked up by a major publisher at all?
As always, I'm hopeful to have one of my books picked up by a publisher, and I'm hoping maybe with some of the kind of bigger names on this book that maybe a publisher might be a little bit more interested than other books. But if not, I'm going to try and get this book out by myself. But if a publisher is willing to help out, that'd be awesome. Unfortunately, well, it's not really unfortunately, but with the names on this book, the funding goal is going to be pretty ambitious. So it's going to be a different kind of campaign than Fallen was.
So you talked about Alice being a multi-part series. Wondering what's next for you. Do you have any other projects on the go that you can talk about?
Fallen, kind of putting a green light on the next 3 issues, trying to rush it ahead of the crowdfunding campaigns so that the books are ready to go pretty much once the campaign's done. Just because there's a couple of irons in the fire for that, so I would like to get that done sooner than later. Alice, I'd like to get the 4 parts done before too long. And there's also other things I could kind of spin off from Alice. And then in the meantime, I'm also working on a Western kind of supernatural horror that I'm kind of midst of developing. So
that sounds pretty intriguing, that's for sure. Now, I know that in Ontario, which is where you are, and that's where I am, where we're starting to hear about restrictions lifting a bit from the pandemic. So my questions to you is, are you planning any festivals or conventions to attend them this year to promote your works?
I'm always kind of keeping an eye out for any kind of conventions that are kind of popping up, or even the Comic-Cons. The last couple of years, I've been wanting to go to at least the Ottawa Comic-Con, but it keeps getting kind of delayed or canceled because of the outbreaks and COVID. So right now I'm just focusing on just getting books out, and then if I have the energy and time and remember to check for convention schedules, I'll kind of keep an eye on that. But right now it's kind of on the back burner for me.
Sure. No, I understand completely. We've talked about a lot of projects. Fallen is still ongoing. Alice is a major project for you, and you've got your supernatural Western. So where do you recommend that people go online and through social media to find out more about your current and your future projects?
Right now, I have a website that's badbeavercomics.com, and I can be found on Twitter at badbeavercomics and Instagram also at badbeavercomics. And I usually post about upcoming projects there. I'm also working on kind of consistently publishing more on my Substack account. Right now, that's been kind of tricky to kind of keep that up with the middle of fulfilling one project and about to launch another one. So time management's kind of something I'm going to have to work on this year, I think.
Now, that's curious to mention Substack. I know that some of the major players have moved there. I know that Jeff Lemire, Chip Zdarsky, and some others have moved to it. Can you talk a wee bit about it? Like, is it an easy process? Is it something that anyone can do?
Oh, yeah, it's fairly easy. It's essentially the same as having just a regular kind of mailing list newsletter. Like originally I had it on MailChimp, and Substack offers a little bit more functionality, I think, than MailChimp did for what I'm looking for. So Substack, I'm able to post to like newsletter updates, but you can also kind of migrate things to a subscription-based service too, where you can maybe start generating income from that. I'm not at that point right now. That's like the big names like Jeff Lemire and like Scott Snyder. They're able to kind of generate any kind of income. But right now, I think that's my best route for newsletters. And I've been enjoying the metrics and the data that come in from that too. So.
Great. Good. Well, Matt, those are all the questions I have for you. But I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
So Alice launches on Kickstarter on March 1st. So that's Tuesday, March 1st. And it will run for 30 days. For the first 2 days, there'll be the early bird kind of deal where it's going to be early bird prices and just this little kind of special thank you gift for backing early. So,
thanks to Matt for the chat. You can discover more about Matt on Twitter at badbeavercomics and online at badbeavercomics.com. You can discover more about Alice on Kickstarter. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2022.